So, Dream, what can I say about it? When I first saw the trailer, I fell in love with it, exploring bizarre environments which meander into one another, experimenting with the rules the game presents to me in order to progress, discovering the fears and anxieties which lay inside someone's own personal mindscape. What's not to love? It felt like Yume Nikki, but in 3D! In fact, this was the game that made me want to try out Let's Playing in the first place. Yeah, I'd toyed with the idea beforehand, but once I saw this trailer, this environment, all of the things that were going on here, no, I wanted to record myself playing this one. This was the one that made me go out and buy a webcam, and you know things are serious when you buy yourself a webcam. After a few months of playing around with the software, recording other games to try and get the feel for it, and working out all the kinks in my setup, I was ready. I started it up, looked around at the house, went to bed, had some fun in the cubes, entered the first level, and what awaited me was this. Oh dear. Oh dear. That's okay, I thought. I've played games before which were a little bit stuttery. As long as it's just exploration, it shouldn't impact the experience too much. Oh, so this is the entire puzzle? Running around in the dark? And it's a maze. And I'm getting chased. Okay, this might be an issue then. So that was the first act. And when I saw how slow and janky it was while editing, I had half a mind to just delete the whole thing and start afresh. But having completed the mazes, I just couldn't bring myself to do them again. There was just something about them that I just did not want to go through. In hindsight, that should have been a pretty big red flag. That the first puzzle in the game was so laborious that the very thought of redoing it was enough to make me think, yeah, this is good enough. This jank, yeah, people can abide that. I'm sure it's not... problem. So I continued the game, first by lowering my settings as low as they would go, then by just upgrading my machine. And there were some parts I genuinely was able to get into. The office was interesting, with its incrementally increasing plumbing problem. The hide-and-seek arrows littered around the resort room were a fun little treasure hunt. The laser puzzle, which demanded that you take a step back in order to solve it. Brilliant! And the Escher room was inspired. I can't even imagine how much work was put into making a level that was traversable from 6 different angles. 6! But then there was this. The conveyor puzzle. Oh no. Dearie no. Anyone who stuck with this game long enough to play this puzzle, or who would have watched this playthrough, will instantly know what I'm talking about. It is the most tedious, the most broken, and the clunkiest puzzle you can imagine. The setup is pretty simple. There are 4 rooms. Each of them needs a food and a drink. Which one gets which? Well, there's a little chalkboard that tells you more or less. No, that's the easy bit. Okay, where does the difficulty come in? Moving the plates around, and my goodness does it take forever. Let me give you an allegory to explain how bad this puzzle is. Imagine you've been tasked with solving a nice little slider puzzle. A little 4x4 grid, nothing too taxing. Okay, but instead of touching the puzzle with your hands, you have to push buttons to operate it, as though it were on the screen, your standard up, down, left, right. Not a big deal? Okay, well, instead of just the up, down, left, right, there are 2 sets of buttons. Up, down, left, right for the cursor to select your tile, and then the up, down, left, right to move the tiles. Okay, still not bad? Well, you can only move 1 tile at a time, and you can only move the tile that your cursor is currently over. Still not a problem? Well, imagine that each console is in a different room. And the only way to get from one room to the other is to walk through a corridor which separates them. And the corridor is an obstacle course. Oh, and you can only see half of the slider puzzle at any one time through one of the rooms. So you have to constantly run between them, not only to operate the thing, but to see where you're moving the stuff. And how do you press these buttons? With a chopstick. Glued to your head, and if that chopstick accidentally falls off, you have to start the entire thing again. Hey, past Psycho, what did you think of this puzzle?
Oh my goodness! That was awful! There was not one part of that puzzle which was designed well. I couldn't agree more.
This puzzle really pulled me out of the flow of the game. It shattered any remaining will I had to give the developers the benefit of a doubt. Now I know it might sound a bit harsh to dismiss the entire game after one bad puzzle, but that's not what I'm doing. Looking back on this game, all these puzzles, every one of them, they just seem to serve as obstacles, just as busy work, stuff that the developers wanted me to do, stuff that the game just wanted me to do to keep me occupied while I was moving around. This is how games work these days! If we looked at Pneuma, the puzzles had a purpose. The way the puzzle is solved is used to further the message of the game. It's used to illustrate the interactions that the player has with the environment, and all of that is built upon in the narrative. Why do the eyes only react when I look at them? Because it's all about perspective, and the game is commenting on the player's position in the universe, and in this case, how things only seem to react when being perceived. What does the conveyor puzzle tell us about Howard? Why is Howard having dreams about laser sliding puzzles and running around in a maze? Is it symbolic or something? Well, it should be. It really should be. But it isn't. Or at least it doesn't feel that way. Everything feels arbitrary. None of it feels as though it was made with giving us a deeper insight into the mind of this troubled man. But instead, because the game designers wanted to make a desert level, we have a desert level. They wanted to make an Escher level, we have an Escher level. They wanted to make an office level, we have an office level. It doesn't feel like it builds up to anything. This is all but confirmed when I get to the end, and all I find, spoiler warning, is a 10-minute long discussion between Howard and Ed, who is important to Howard for reasons explained only now, while we get to sit and watch some floating cubes. This game's idea of an achievement is watching cubes float. Upon doing a little bit of research, it turns out that there is quite a lot of stuff that I missed in my playthrough. The nightmares, for example, I never actually completed a single one. Had I done so, it would have offered me more of these little dialogue-heavy vignettes, presumably adding greater insight into the struggles of Howard. I kind of have two problems with this, however. One, the reason I didn't see these is simply because the game wouldn't let me. I was unable to leave the room in the first one, no matter how many times I pressed a little button that apparently is the thing you're meant to press. I'd ran out of ideas entirely in the second one, and the third one had a wonderful little glitch which made it literally impossible to complete. Consistent glitches. But the game still let me progress. It still let me continue through the acts, despite not actually completing the puzzles. It still let me progress. So how can I be blamed for missing these apparently mandatory areas? If they are so integral to the game's plot, shouldn't the designers have put a little more effort into ensuring that one cannot progress without seeing them? The second problem is narrative. If the entire story is crammed into these dialogue sections, so much so that missing them means you lose all context, then what does that say on how well integrated the story is to the game as a whole? Take a look at Master Reboot, a game very much in a similar theme to Dream. You run around these worlds exploring for a way to progress. The levels are the literal memories of your protagonist. From the dollhouse she played in as a little girl, to the fair she went to as a college student. Every level tells you something about her life. When you finish each level, you get these cutscenes, little snapshots of the events leading up to what happens in-game. And if that wasn't enough for you, there are ducks. Everywhere. No matter where you look, everywhere is ducks. I promise it makes sense in context. And each one allows you another little nugget of sweet, juicy narrative information. You can't go anywhere without literally tripping over narrative in this game. The entire game is made of narrative. Where is this detail in Dream? Why am I walking around a resort? Is this a resort that Howard went to? Why am I walking around an office? Did he work here? Nothing in the narrative seems to suggest that. The conversation at the end seems to suggest he was unemployed. Why is this office in Howard's head? Why, Howard? Why? But the final icing on the cake are the glitches. And there are plenty. Some of them minor annoyances, some of them just weird, some of them game-breaking. But so consistently often, it's difficult to tell whether the game is actually glitching or just being weird on purpose. Fundamentally, I can't trust this game, and this is meant to be an exploration game. I'm supposed to figure out how to pass through by trial and error, by examining the rules of the environment and trying to figure things out. How can I do that if I can't trust whether the game is withholding pieces from me with intent, or because it just dropped them and can't find them anymore? I can't be certain whether the game is demonstrating rules to me, or just being broken. How can I trust the rules when the rules are not consistent? As of recording this, developers have been silent since the release of a bug patch, little more than a month after launch. And that was over half a year ago. Ever since then, they just disappeared without a trace, almost as though they moved on without looking back. When I look at their Kickstarter campaign back in 2013, all three of them seemed so excited and so proud of their little project, and really enthusiastic about what they were hoping to achieve. Where did that go? What happened to that enthusiasm? Why does it feel as though they just gave up, abandoned it, decided it wasn't worth the hassle anymore? It might be the case that they just started to lose steam in the latter half of their development cycle. The resort area seems to be the most unrefined level, with copy and pasted models all over the place, and the layout which just feels to me like the designer was saying, "Yeah, that's good enough, I'm done. You do whatever." Perhaps that's why the conveyor puzzle was the great mess it turned out to be. However, we'll never really know for sure unless they tell us. It's sad, and it's disappointing. Especially considering what the game could have been had the developers not lost heart in their project. There are so many good ideas here that just need to be re-examined and refined. HyperSloth, if you're watching this, then I hope that what you take away from this video isn't just a barrage of criticism and why this game just doesn't work. If you are still interested in making games, please use this experience as a starting point to build from. You've heard what I think. The reviews on Steam should give you plenty of material to figure out what worked and what didn't this time round. I'd say have a go at fixing the bugs in Dream so you can understand what failed, so you can give us, a fixed product. So even if thematically it doesn't live up to what you were hoping for, it at least is, a functional game. After that, take everything you've learned and put it into your next project. Make it small if you need to, but make it well. And focus on trying to make it work and make it fit your themes. And when you're finished, let me know, and I'll be just as eager to play through it as I was my first time with Dream.